Hi, it's Doug DeVitri with the CoTrackPro podcast. And today, a very special guest, Rael Lapenta with PACCS. And I want her to tell you what it means. Welcome, Rael, to the show.
Hi, Doug. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, I'm here as the executive director of PACS. PACS is an international organization that was launched recently, but it stands for the Professional Alliance of Child Centered Safety. And you can find us at PACS.global, PACCS.
Great. And when you think about child-centered safety, like what does that even involve?
So that is a term that was started here in Pennsylvania. That's where I am. And PACS was actually originally started in Pennsylvania years ago. A professional in central Pennsylvania started this organization for other professionals working in child custody matters as a way to support each other and share important research and information. And so we just launched globally because here in Pennsylvania, they have just recently changed the custody factors to include the term child safety. So they now define it in the custody factors, and it says it includes psychological, emotional, and well being of a child. And it is required to have more substantial weight put as the safety under of a child.
Sure. And so many people think about even child abuse, right? It's physical, like bruises, scars, broken bones. But emotional abuse is so much different. Can you give us some maybe examples of what that might look like?
Absolutely. So, the term that it's under is psychological maltreatment. And it could be a whole list of things. There's an organization called APSAC that has put out a guide that's interpreted to help courts and professionals understand it. But it includes a lot of things. It includes the regular things that you and I are all hear about: neglect, a parent berating a child directly, but it also comes from types of abuse where a parent is unavailable for that child. They could make that child feel as if they're being threatened, that people in their life, isolation is one of them, spurning is one, terrorism is one. There's a bunch of different characteristics that are listed under child psychological maltreatment. And the big thing that they're pushing right now is not only do you have to find those things, but those things have to create damage to a child. So a parent having a bad day, right, and doing something that is psychologically damaging is not great. No one would say to do it. It's still bad. But one day is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a pattern of fear and terrorism and isolation and control that manipulates a child that then has lasting effects on them.
Sure. And, for children who are going through this, especially when they're younger, they might not necessarily have the language, to be able to share what's actually happened. So, how does that even show up for in a child's life?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm sure that could have met tons of people that have been in a relationship that they didn't realize was psychologically maltreating them, right? It's that gaslighting piece, a word salad, all of those terms that get thrown around so loosely, but coercing someone to change how they're behaving, to try to either have a reward, which would could be love, that's a psychological maltreatment, or changing how they are to prevent consequences constantly in someone's life. That kind of codependent need to fix that what it is. So, um, and a child is physically abused, we would never expect them to tell a professional, right? That's what we as adults, in terms of child safety, are charged with, right? That's our job to come in and say, nope, this is maltreatment and this isn't maltreatment. And it really shouldn't be up to the child to have to convey that.
Sure, and I can imagine that can be a difficult conversation for anyone, right? Whose responsibility is it to really do this type of investigation, to make sure that, number one, it stops, right? And then
Right.
also that there's proactive remedies, to make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. I mean, so there's different agencies that are charged with this in different ways. So if it's a law, for example, In most states, physical abuse and sexual abuse is against the law. Psychological maltreatment might not be in some states, but if it's the law that we're talking about, that's the police who investigate those crimes. So, for example, custody interference, the interference with child custody is a law in all 50 states, and it has been for decades. So you should be able to call the police if that law is being broken. In Pennsylvania, the statute is 2904, and it says that if you interfere with the custody of children, right, that's against the law, it's a felony. So that should be police. CPS or Child Protective Services are also tasked with investigating child maltreatment, and excuse me, it should be for all forms of maltreatment. I feel like we would probably get a good general consensus that it's not looked at like it should be. I think some states are better than others. So that would be CPS should investigate that for child welfare. And what we're seeing more and more and more is that the courts, family courts, are really tasked with this to understand when they see forms of abuse like custody interference, parental alienation, psychological maltreatment, that they are then tasked with protecting children in those family disputes.
Sure, and I imagine there's a lot of education that needs to happen for a variety of different roles, and how difficult it is for it to get everybody on the same page with this, right? You would think it would, we're 2026, you think it would stop, and now we have online it only multiplies the damage. What are some ways that we can get better at educating others on this situation?
Well, I mean, I think that it's not as tricky as people think, right? If we know, let's look at the definition. What does the definition say of child psychological maltreatment? It very clearly lays out what is psychological maltreatment. But like you said, the courts just aren't protecting kids in the same manner. Excuse me. So that's one reason that PACS really realized it had to go globally, because the research is also there. I mean, the research on parental alienation, on the damage done to children in those, there was just actually another study put out this week that said that when children are affected by parental alienating behaviors or PABs, the more behaviors they're exposed to, the more lifetime damage is done. And, the research just isn't available enough to people. And I can value that, people that are in custody matters deal with a whole lot of concerns and avenues. And of course, they're never paid for at the right rate that would ever say how much that they, are invested in a case. And that's one of the reasons PACS is not hoping, we are providing, to members a curated research library that's dedicated solely to child psychological and emotional well-being. And we have experts that are there looking to just share that information with people that are interested.
Yeah, yeah, and working with professionals, I imagine that each one of them kind of has their own specific role, and then it stops, right? And if you're even representing yourself pro se, you might not necessarily be able to afford the professionals to be able to do in and
Mm.
do the appropriate investigations. So, how can we kind of circumvent this to prevent that from happening?
I think it would be the same situation that if you're pro se and you have to look for that information, and search it out, PACS is also open to parents or anybody who's interested in that kind of research. So you have to know it's there, and then you have to know how to use it. So things like AI and those kind of supports now are helping parents so much. But if you don't know what to look for, you don't know what to look for, and you're not going to search for it, right? Like we see that situation all the time. We see that all the time with parents who are trying to enforce laws through family court. You're going to the wrong door. And so you're getting the wrong answer. And people are being told, oh, that's not something we handle here. But no one's saying, because it's a crime, you need to go to police, right? Or the police are saying that's not a law because they don't know it's not a law. So it's a lot of knowing the information and the right information and advocating for that stuff on every avenue that you are on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you had told me you were just part of a conference, this pretty big conference on parental alienation. Can you talk to me kind of about the vibe and the energy that it's kind of extending globally? Because again, it's not just local. This is happening in a lot of different places.
Yeah, no, it's happening all over the world. And so, what we hear a lot so far is a lot of the he said, she said. I mean, that's something that I find is so dramatic and traumatic to children because people get involved in this. He said, she said, is it him? Is it her? Who is it? That doesn't matter because guess what? That fight and that conflict is an issue for the kids. And so we have a lot of trauma coming out in these stories, and a lot of people feeling like they have to pick a side. And what happens when that happens is you don't pick the child's side ever, or a child is being pressured to report something that's not accurate because there's so much pressure being put on the child's voice, especially in situations where it's coerced. So, the online conference was really, it was, um, I'm not really sure the word to use for it, but it was an energy and a vibe that was about solutions, right? And that's what we need to do. And I feel like the advocates that are coming forward now are okay with saying, okay, that's not my lane. I don't have to do that. For example, like Robert Garza is doing a phenomenal job of legislation. So so we don't have to do that. We're lucky, right? Like he's doing that piece, the interference with child custody coalition, they're educating parents on how to get crimes enforced. We have people like Madison Greenberg and Taylor Ray Jones that are coming forward and saying, hey, I was a child victim of this, and this is what happened, right? We have the researchers that are putting the research out. So I think what's really happening now is people being okay with saying that's their lane, that's their role, and all of our
Yeah.
goals is child centered safety.
Gosh, and you would think that would be the goal from the start, right? But many times it's
It gets
yeah,
messy, right?
it's the money that can kind of control these things. So what I want to kind of help people realize is that there are other tools and resources, and that you're not alone,
Yeah.
you know?
That's huge because when you feel like alone, right, it just enhances your trauma and you feel like you're not being getting justice and you're not, right? But you have to be willing to say, okay, I need to learn and I need to learn from somebody. And who can I go to that has the actual information that can help me learn the situation? Because you can't just go into family court and think that everybody's going to look for justice for your children. I mean, you're going to be disappointed if that's what you're going at.
Sure, sure. So when you think about all the different tools that are available, what would you say, and it could be technology based, what would you find is most effective in either educating or supporting this type of justice reform?
Mhm. So I think that it comes from a lot of avenues. I think you have to be open minded, and I think you have to acknowledge this severe, severe trauma that you're going through. And if you do not take the steps to take care of yourself, you're going to present in a way that doesn't help you in court. And if it's fair or not, that's what it is. We're expected to go to family court stone face. That's insane. It's insane to ask someone to do that, but that's what you have to do. And so you have to acknowledge that. You have to go that route of getting self care. You have to go to a support group. You have to get a therapist. You have to deal with the grief and the trauma. Robert Garza, like I mentioned earlier, he calls it a vomit group. You need to vomit that stuff up before you go to court. And then you have to get yourself together real quick so that you can present the facts and the evidence, and you have to feel confident in it. There's attorneys, many attorneys that I know that would go into a situation and know it's damaging, but they're not fighting with that kind of conviction. They're just not. It's
Mm,
not their kids, it's not their family. But if you bring research to them and you're confident in your position, and being an active part where you can take direction, you can't vomit all of the evidence up to your family court. It's impossible. They're not going to look through it, right? Or nor do you have the money to pay them to go through it. So you have to be able to get your evidence and your data in the right format too. And you have to have yourself centered enough to be able to do that. So, again, dealing with those issues so you can get there the right way.
Sure, and I can imagine that's really difficult when the system itself is the one causing the trauma.
Absolutely. Of course. It's almost insane. Like it's ridiculous to ask someone to have to do that. But
What
that's what we have to do. So
what are you most, with all the advocacy that you're doing right now and continue to do in the future, what are you most excited about in terms of the work?
I mean, obviously, I'm excited about PACS. I think that that piece was missing, that piece for professionals. When I was at a meeting that they were having when it was just the Pennsylvania Alliance a few months ago, and I heard professional after professional coming up to the table saying they were dealing with licensing board complaints. They were dealing with online harassment. Some people were dealing with in person harassment, death threats. I mean, that is legit. I know that if you're dealing with alienation, false allegations, and harassment is part of the course, right? So if you're a targeted parent, you are very well aware that's happening. And so as a parent, when I went to that table and I heard all these professionals talking about it, selfishly, I thought, oh my gosh, this is why no one wants to help us, right? This is why, because they're dealing with the same thing. They should be protected. There's no reason that everybody has to deal with this literally just harassment and bullying in a form that it keeps everybody away. So I think that the organization with PACS that's behind the research, right? The research is clear. We have experts, world renowned experts that are on there and they want to share that information. And I'm hoping that it can help the professionals protect themselves. People in our messaging boards have said, hey, who has dealt with this kind of thing? We offer an online weekly lunch and learn run by our vice president, Lynn Brooks, who they just have any professionals, attorneys, custody evaluators, all kinds of get GALs. We're doing a big GAL training in Pennsylvania soon, which I'm excited about. But getting them the information in a way that's organized that can help them so they know how to protect not only themselves, but then help stay in the game to help protect our kids.
Gosh, that's so great. You have a lot of resources to share, and you have a couple different websites, not just
Mhm.
one. Can you kind of share with the group what you kind of have in your toolbox to offer support to not just the parents, but also the professionals as well who are trying to kind of navigate this maze?
Yeah, absolutely. So for professionals, any professionals that are dealing with family court, I encourage you to go to PACCS.global, PACCS.global on the internet. And that is a resource, or you can email at info@PACCS.global. That resource is really catered to the professionals that are in the case. So we also do have a parent support group on Thursdays because it's important for parents to be able, but it's not a typical support group, right? It's not the one, let's just come here and cry. We want to give you pieces. We want to give you action steps. We want to help you take control there. So we do offer that part through PACS. I also do a false allegation workshop through PA Protect Kids, which is our next one is May 30th and 31st. I do it with another father that was falsely accused. His video had gone viral. And we really focus on how parents can very quickly understand what's happening to them. We sort of explain the different routes that false allegations go because it could be criminal, civil, or CPS, and they're all different rules, all different ball games, all different evidence codes, right? So, and if you don't know that, no one's going to tell you that. That family court attorney is like a specialty, like a brain surgeon. And if you go and say your foot hurts, the brain surgeon is going to say, I can't help you. And they're not going to
Mhm.
tell you to go somewhere you need to go. So, that's helping them navigate that way. I also help run the Interference with Child Custody Coalition because that's a really important avenue for people to understand that some of these things are a crime and crimes don't need an attorney to get help. So it's at facebook.com/enforce ICC. And so ICC stands for Interference with Child Custody. We help parents understand that it is a crime and how you can get that enforced on your own. So all my groups really are helping educate people on those kind of things so that they can get the resources to help themselves in these situations. And the ultimate goal is that people can help themselves and It's not just run away that we see a lot. They're like, phew, I dodged a bullet, I'm out. And then the stories just aren't coming forward, especially to counter some of the other stories that are coming out. We really need our voices to be strong and clear and confident, and take a piece in that advocacy for other people.
So great, Rael. I'm so glad that we connected. I appreciate you so much for being on the CoTrackPro podcast. We're gonna put all the links and everything so people can access this in the show notes. Any last final thoughts that you have? I know we just probably gone about 20 minutes, but maybe one piece of advice if you're a parent out there who's facing this and trying to do it all themselves.
Mm. So I guess one piece of advice I would say is reach out, realize that you're not alone, and look for it. And I want to thank you too, Doug, with the CoTracker Plus, CoTracker Pro, because you came in saying, hey, this is something that's valuable. And we really appreciate what you've done for PACS. Groups like you and your organization that's looking to just help others navigate this are so, so crucial. And we're so grateful for the time that you've given to us and to me personally, to help us get other tools to help them. So we thank you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.